Hello and welcome to the Ren Den. I'm Ren, and today I'm going to finish a project I haven't touched in 7 months. And we're already off the rails. Hello, this is Ren from the future. Ren from the past was about to tell you some made-up stuff, which was a sort of half-remembered timeline of the story engine and their decks. So rather than try to put up corrections on the screen and make that make sense, I just thought I'd insert a little bit here. The story engine was a Kickstarter project that was fulfilled, I think, in 2020. It had 5 different types of cards and it was designed as a story builder. So for D&D campaigns, for creative writing, it was fairly straightforward in the way that you use it because there's only 5 types of cards. I backed it in digital form and got the cards printed separately, then had to cut them all up into the individual cards and round all the corners and what have you. Then 2 years later, they did the Deck of Worlds, which was about world building, like the physical space more than the kind of character relations, which is sort of what the story engine was kind of focused on. So there were a bunch more different card types and more as well in expansions. And again, I backed the digital version, got the cards printed, cut them all out, rounded the corners, blah blah blah. And then last year they came out with the Lore Masters deck, which was essentially a kind of combination of the 2 previous decks. So it was about kind of building characters and character relations sort of in concert with the sort of geographic location, and it had a lot more variety. By this point there were expansions for different genres and loads of different card types, and again I got the digital version, cut them out, rounded the corners, blah blah blah. So the arrival of the files for the Lore Masters deck is really where this video starts. There's so many like random generators and kind of prompt engines out there, but these days a lot of them are digital, and I really enjoy the kind of tactile experience of these cards and like literally laying out on the table, oh well that's connected to that, and like it's just such a different experience, and I think it really helps to kind of cement what's happening in my brain. This video isn't sponsored, by the way, I just think they're neat. Last year they released a new deck called the Lore Masters deck on BackerKit, which I backed, and I began to film the process of turning them into part of the deck. That was in November. It's May at time of filming. I got a little bit stuck. So here's where I got to, and you are going to see some footage that I filmed last year, so things will move around and it'll look a little bit different. Bear with me. It's okay, we'll get back to the present. So once the files had arrived, the first thing I needed to do was trim and cut out the cards themselves. That actually didn't take so long. This is not as kind of chunky as the original deck was, so it's a little bit easier to kind of process the whole thing. I spent maybe a couple of evenings just like cutting out all of the cards, and it really is the kind of work that I like. It's repetitive, there's not a lot of brain engagement required, and the progress is really tangible. Like you can literally see the pile of cards growing as you're cutting them out, which obviously makes my brain happy. Once I cut out all the cards, I had to round the corners again so they'd match the first lot. Having a couple of different corner cutting tools is actually really helpful because one of them's quite small and one of them's quite big, so I was able to swap backwards and forwards, which meant that I wasn't kind of as in danger of like RSI as I would have been if I just had to do the whole thing with one. Because it meant I could sort of vary grip and things like that. And again, it was just an easy rhythm to sink into. I was doing a lot of this right before bed, and actually it was kind of perfect to send me off to sleep afterwards. So it was really satisfying to do. But once I'd finished prepping the cards, I had a problem. They didn't fit in the carry case I bought for the previous deck. The box was never perfect anyway. It's got rounded corners, so the cards that were in the corners were in danger of getting a little bit squished. But it worked for the size of the deck that it was, and there wasn't a lot in it. Like, It's possible I could have crammed the cards into that space and I would have been able to fit the whole thing in one, but it just wasn't going to be satisfying or easy to use. So I had to come up with another solution. I couldn't find anything like ready built that I liked, and then after a while it occurred to me that I could use an old board game box, because it's got that sort of long flat profile that I was looking for. So I went to the charity shop and I bought a copy of Upwards. I used to love this game as a kid. We used to play it all the time. We had a travel version that was in this much smaller box, and we used to play it all the time. But I don't have the family copy, so what my plan was to take all the bits out of this box, put them into, make a fabric carry case for them, and enjoy. But what actually happened was this box has been on my shelf ever since, and I haven't done anything with it. And in the meantime, because the deck has been in two places, some of it's in this box just for safekeeping, and some of it's in the carry case that what fitted. I haven't used the deck, and I'm starting to think about planning the first section of a D&D homebrew, and it would be really helpful to have the deck to hand to be able to use. So I was thinking about what was stopping me on this project, like what's the first step, why can't I do that, where's the block? And I realised this box is actually too long for the shelf, so what I was going to have to do was cut it down, which is then fiddlier because of making sure that the connected bits are secure. I would also have to cover it with like proper paper, which then I got into a sort of whole thing about thinking about like paper grains, and I don't know what grain the paper on the box is, and so I'm gonna have to do test sections to make sure that it doesn't warp when I glue it, and like it was getting too tangled. So new plan, new box. I have bought this. It's just a kind of like brown, like craft with a K, cardboardy thing. So really straightforward. It is slightly bigger than the carry case, big enough to fit the cards, not so big that it needs editing to fit on the shelf. And because it's plain, I don't need to use like thick paper to cover it. So I picked up some map-themed decoupage paper, which my plan is to cover it with that and make it a really cool box. This version of this I'm excited about, and I've started filming so that I have to finish it. I've never decoupaged. I think broadly it's the same as like paper mache, right? Because it's the thin paper and you glue. Probably should have looked that up before I committed to doing this today, but that's where we're at. By hook or by crook, I'm going to finish this. So that brings you up to date. We are going to move forward. Let's get started. Allegedly, there's instructions in here somewhere. I hope there's enough paper. Okay, so instructions: tear it to pieces, apply varnish glue on the object, put paper on the glue part, reapply on top to smooth, repeat to completely cover. What if I didn't do that? Do we think varnish glue is the same as PVA? Probably not. Alright, I'm gonna go find the other stuff. Alright, this is what I've got. So let's hope that that works. I've also got some brushes and a card for scooshing. I'm sure that's the technical term. What I'm hoping is one sheet of this is enough to do the top, and then I can use two to do the bottom. I think that should be about perfect, actually. It seems like the way to do it, huh? This is already drying, so I'm scared. Right, let's get some paper on this before I lose my nerve completely. So we want it to be about I mean, a little bit of crinkling's not the worst thing in the world, right? Because it will make it look more like oldie? I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, I think the crinkling is inevitable, but I think actually I'm really enjoying that texture, and I'm not just saying it because I can't avoid it. So how are we going to fold this in? My bookbinder heart says cut the corners, so I think I'm going to do that here. Please don't be a bad idea. Like that. Okay, so cutting the corner, not a bad idea. Great. Let's cut all the corners. And what I'm doing is I'm going a little bit above where the creases are ending up, because I would rather have too much papier than not enough. I'm also being way less precise than I would be if this was like your nice bookbinding paper, because it seems quite forgiving, which is nice. Is a scraper the best tool for the long edges? I'm reluctant to use a brush. What I want is those little PVA scrapers that kids have, that we get to kids in schools. But I don't have that, so this will have to do. You know, that could be worse. So now, that could be a hell of a lot worse. Could be a hell of a lot better, but you know. Okay. Okay, that's the edges, and then we just got to do these bits. It's literally just occurred to me that I could get my bookbinding brushes out, because those are actually full glue. But I feel like I'm in this now. I might use the glue brushes for the box, because that's a bigger surface area. And then just fold it over. Here we go. Okay. One more side. Oh, did I just rip that? It's fine. Top tip, have short nails for decoupage, or use a stick. But, not to have catchphrase or anything, but I'm quite pleased with that. I think obviously the paper is not completely flat against the surface, but it's not really supposed to be. It's not that kind of paper. And I think actually the wrinkle gives it a really nice texture. So we're going to let that one dry, and then I will go over it with the bookbinding brushes and this stuff, just to seal it, because otherwise it probably will tear. And then we gotta do this one. So the thing about this one is, because it's slightly deeper, I think I'm going to need to use both sheets. I'm just trying to work out how I want to do that without literally putting a line across the middle. Is there a repeat on these? Oh no, it's completely different. This has a circle, and so does that, but they are not the same circle. I'm just going to double check, because that lines up with that. Oh, hang on. That lines up with that. There we go. Right. Okay. In that case, if I do that, everything's the wrong way up right now, don't think about it. I'll have enough to fold it in. I won't have enough to cover the inside of the bottom, but that's okay because it's going to be covered in cards anyway, so I don't think that matters. I should measure the halfway point, shouldn't I? This is already more thought than I thought I was going to put into this. And of course it's slightly longer than 30 centimetres. What I'm going to do is I'm literally going to put the ruler in the middle of the box and then do a line of 15. Bookbinding brushes. That's about the line. Okay. Okay, and then this is the join. And then there we go. Oh, that's so nice. Do you know what? That is not bad. That could be a lot worse. I'm going to do the sides first because it'll give me more wiggle room to make sure that the join stays straight. Whereas if I do these sides, I just kind of have to accept whatever I've got left. Yes. Oh, I forgot about the corners. Annoying. Okay. We need to cut. That is excess. But I am going to try and keep more of that and cut it at a really weird angle. Because I want that to go over there nicely. A little bit of a gap there, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, how well do we think this is going to go? After my hack job on the corners. I'm going to trim it to about here. Because I want it to be slightly higher than the edge, because that's what's happening the rest of the way around. Or just get over the corner if I do it like that. Did that from the outside in, which you're not supposed to do, but there we are. The last side. So we're going to trim it again to be a little bit shorter. Yeah, you can sort of see how janky it is from here. But that will all be covered up, so it's fine. It's fine. Not bad for my first go. There we go. So I'm just putting a little bit of extra over the edges in the hopes that it will encourage them to adhere. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go and have some lunch. And then once it's drier, anyway, I'm going to go over it again with the brush and the matte gel to give it a bit of a sealed coat and wait for that to dry, and then we can put the cards in. I'm back. The box is dry. It looks great. You can't even really tell that there's a join on the bottom, which is very satisfying. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but I'm sure that will be fine. You might be able to tell from the lighting situation, I did not go and have lunch and come back. It's been a day and a half. I got distracted, but I have to go back to work tomorrow, and the desk is still covered in newspaper, so I do need to get this finished before tomorrow morning. So fortunately, all we've got left to do is move the cards from the old carry case and the random stacks that I've got lying around into here and hope they all fit. It is a little bit taller than the box, but I tested it and there is enough overlap still that it should go on. I'm assuming that the order these are in is an order that makes sense, because I want it to be reasonably intuitive to use. But step one is making sure they fit. I might make little sort of cardboard dividers just to keep them separate. I've got some grey board still from bookbinding that I could use for that. Got these little notepad-y papery bits. What are these? Call it half of one of those. And then, yeah, for now, I will just cut them to be about there. So let's do a few of those. That'll do for now. I can always make some more. To be honest, what I'm thinking is this may not actually be the last thing that I do with these cards, because I'm not really happy with how I'm doing this. So what I might do is sort these tonight so that they at least go in the box and I can tidy the desk, and then maybe tomorrow evening make up some dividers and work out what my labelling situation is going to be. These are not remotely uniform to each other, and I kind of hate that. Once I've made the box nice, to reward you for persisting with this project, I will make something. A world, a town, a guy, maybe a little bit of both of those things, all of those things, so that you get a sense of how the deck works, because it is really one of my favourite world building tools. Even if you eventually just like riff off of what it sort of produces, I think what it comes up with is really interesting. Just realised I've once again put the light on the wrong side. Ugh. That might be as good as it's going to get, I'm sorry. At least what I'm doing is not actively in shadow now. I mean, technically these are completely different decks. I'm not necessarily doing myself any favours by putting them all in the same box, but it makes sense to me. Okay, we've just got these left. Problem is... Oh, hang on. We might just about do it. Oh, the lid's not going to want to go on, but we'll make that a problem for me in a minute. I suppose I could, if this doesn't fit, I could try and do them the other way, especially if I'm going to put dividers in anyway, and that might fit more neatly. I've literally only got these left to go in, but there isn't really room. And like, I do need to be able to get my hand in here in order to, you know, use them. So, right. Please fit. The box is so nice. I might just for now fill the spaces and worry less about the order, and worry more about that when I know what fits. Okay. Well, that's a relief. And there is plenty of room actually to put some grey board in as a divider, so I will probably do that tomorrow if I've got time. This is one of those projects where I've absolutely been desperate to finish it off, and it's just constantly, I'm just not quite able to, which is a little bit frustrating, but we are so nearly there. And the truth, it just about goes on. What I might do is find like some ribbon or something to tie it around it, just to make sure that it stays on and doesn't explode on the shelf. We're nearly there. I'm going to tidy the desk and go to bed. And then, yeah, all we got to do is slip some... I'm so tired. Dividers in here and sort out the labels. Anyway, yeah, just those little bits. So hopefully here followeth some sort of montage or footage of me doing that. And then we can get on with actually playing with the cards. Good morning. It is earlier than I would like, but I should just about have enough time to finish this before work. I have some grey board. I have some yellow webbing, which I'm going to try and use for ribbon, hoping there's enough of that. And what I've decided I'm going to do for the labels is, because I don't have any ideas that I like better right now, I'm just going to convert all of the old ones to exactly what I did last night and cut these in half and trim a little bit off the top so that broadly they will all match. And then if I decide to get clever with it later, then fine. But in the meantime, it'll be a consistent look. So we just need to cut this board down and scribble some labels and we're done. So I want it to be lower than the cards, so let's call it 5 centimeters, and we'll need 2 strips. So I'm going to take peak advantage of the straight lines, and I'm going to literally cut a strip from the top of this and a strip from the bottom of this. It's hard trying to let the blade do the work, because what I want to do is just like force it through, but then you risk bending the blade and it's not good practice. Neither is trying to cut the tape. Not quite as tidy as my first one, but tidy enough. Sort of the whole point of this is you're not going to see it, so. Oh, it just fits. Yes, excellent. Didn't really want to trim down the edges actually. There we go. Right, so we just got to redraw some of these and then we're good to go. Because the original label stuff I used was card, which means it's sort of stood up to everything since. But in this configuration, I actually don't want something that stiff. Really glad I got up a little bit early to make that happen. It looks spectacular. I'm not going to have time to play with it now, unfortunately, but I will find some time probably this evening to film a little bit of actually using the deck so you can see what this was all for. Because otherwise I feel like the whole thing's a little bit abstract. So, hope you enjoy. So here is the completed collection. This is going to get me like amped up for world building every time I open this. There are basically 3 collections for these cards. There's the Story Engine SE, which is the original set of cards, and then there's Deck of Worlds, and then there's the Lore Masters deck. What I realised when I was sorting through the cards is that actually there are some crossovers, and it didn't make sense to me to keep all 3 completely separate, especially because I've integrated the expansion packs. So what I've decided is basically here to here is like character focused, this section, and then this is location focused, and then this section is kind of stuff. Objects and creatures and deities and just kind of like general creation of things. And then this section is storytelling specifically, so like adventure hooks, events that might have happened in the past, events that might happen in the future, that sort of thing. And then the back section of both of these are kind of modifiers and descriptors that can be applied to really to any section. but the initials on each label will give me a guide for sort of the intended purpose. So for example, if I'm looking for an agent to have a descriptor, I might pick from aspect rather than namesake, because that would make more sense. This is definitely not following precisely the rules of the Dex, but it's what makes sense to me. So if I just move this to the side, I'm going to start with a region, and I'm just picking at random from the box. So we have craters. So that's the sort of geological feature of the area. Next, we're going to choose a landmark in that area. So we can have point or temple. I'm going to choose temple because I think that evokes more for me. Then I'm going to skip to faction to see what kind of people might run this temple. So we've got loads of different options on here. We've got traits and agendas and backgrounds on the back of the card, and on the front we've got a sort of description of some kind of faction with an encouragement to essentially pick another card to make that happen. So for example, we could say Sages of the Craters. That'll do for this exercise. I think that is quite good. So I'm just going to pop that card under here to make that. Then we want someone who is going to be involved either against or with this faction. So let's say I'm going to pick from agent, and I've got options: a dicer, a tactician, a lord or lady, a swashbuckler. I think to work out who this person is, I might also select an aspect. So we want one of these to match one of those. We've got revolutionary, gilded, traumatic, misunderstood. I quite like revolutionary. What about revolutionary lord and lady? Might be someone who is threatened. Maybe their power is themselves threatened by the temple. We could figure out who the temple is to. So I'm gonna go to deity. We've got the gambler, the destroyer, the magpie, the prisoner. I think the destroyer makes sense for craters, but that is a little bit classic, like the bad guy wants to destroy everything for this. So I think what I'm going to say is the prisoner, because I think it would be interesting if each crater was like an opened prison, and actually there is one that is still unopened, and that's what the sages of the temple are trying to protect. I'm also going to pick from origin to find out what might have happened in the past at these craters. Site of a famous protest, former grasslands, traded by warring nations, founded on a joke or a dare. I quite like former grasslands, just giving it sort of some depth and backstory. I think it would make sense as to why like a noble person might be interested in the area, because they might want to return it to the kind of profitable grasslands that it was. How might they do that? I am going to pull from conflict. Okay, now they are being consumed by it, and now it has made them a target. Well, I think the revolutionary lord or lady has definitely made themselves a target by working against the temple, so there's that. And I'm going to try an event that has maybe sort of made that more immediately relevant. We've got a race, a purge, a flood, an accord. I'm going to say that the difficulty that the lord or lady is having is that there is an accord between them and the sages of the temple. So again, this is slightly, I'm not saying this is how you use the cards officially, but that's what's going to link those two things, is that there was a sort of ancient agreement that they would support one another, and now that's fallen apart. And I think for now I'm just going to have one more thing here, which will be an anchor. So we've got a tool, workshop, a technique, an invention. Do you know what I really like the idea of is the workshop makes me think these sort of crater prisons maybe the technique to make them has been lost. And so there's a degree of tension in what the sages are protecting is a sort of dying thing. If this lost prison is ever opened, they sort of cease to have a reason to be. I guess that falls more under technique than workshop. So I am going to put that under here because it's about the sages. And basically, that's how you use the deck. So if that technique of like world building and story building is something that you think you might be interested in, definitely check out the Story Engine, the Deck of Worlds, the Lore Masters deck. They've got a ton of expansions. They've got different sort of levels of like how comprehensive you want your kind of collection to be from the beginning. I've certainly found that the easiest way to do it is to back them on, now Back-A-Kit, used to be Kickstarter, and get the files printed myself. But they're just a really good technique for world building, and I really like I said, the sort of tactility of it. You don't get a lot of those anymore, apart from like rolling a die for a random table generation or whatever. There's something about kind of laying it out on the table that really makes you think about connections, and that's really cool. So I hope you enjoyed the process of that. I'm really pleased to have this finished and in a usable state. I'm really looking forward to using it more. Disclaimer for anyone watching who I play D&D with, this was an example world building scenario. This is not spoilers for anything, but yeah, do check them out if it seems like the kind of thing that you would enjoy also. Thanks for sticking with me. I think this is probably one of the more chaotic videos I've done, but I sort of got into a position where I just needed to finish it at any cost, so we've made it. For that, I am grateful. Let me know if you have any tips for other like world building techniques. I'm always kind of on the lookout for new ideas. And as always, please do like and subscribe if you fancy it. And otherwise, take care, and I will see you on the next project.